He would love nothing more than to divide our country based on race, religion, gender, orientation, or immigration status. Because this is the only way he knows he can prevent the solidarity of us working together across all of our differences.
You know, it's really quite interesting how people have tried to manipulate people and how to intimidate people and change their minds. This has been going on since we've been in America. You know, you go back to the days of slavery.
If you believe people should be judged by their character, their choices, and their actions instead of the color of their skin, you need to hear what Dr. Ben Carson just said. His message was powerful, direct, and completely unapologetic. Something just happened in this hearing that nobody saw coming, and the moment completely changed the direction of the hearing. Before we break it down, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and stick around because you don't want to miss what Carson said next.
And thank you for your courage to be here, because in the society that we live in today, it takes a lot of courage to say that you're supporting President Trump. And you know, it's really quite interesting how people have tried to manipulate people and how to intimidate people and change their minds. This has been going on since we've been in America. You know, you go back to the days of slavery, you know, and in a lot of the states there were more slaves than there were owners. So what did they do? They had to divide the slaves. So they told the ones in the house, you're better than the ones in the yard. And the ones in the yard, you're better than the ones in the field. And then after slavery was over, the light-skinned ones, you're better than the dark-skinned ones. And on it went, trying to divide people. Today, they say, if you are a conservative, then you are somehow an Uncle Tom, you're a horrible person, you're a demon. What a bunch of crap, you know, but, you know, it's been going on for hundreds of years. And it's really time to put a stop to it. So I am very happy to see that you have the courage to come out. You know, it doesn't bother me anymore because, you know, I only worry about what God thinks. I don't worry about what these other people think. But, you know, sometimes people ask me, what happened to you? You changed. I haven't changed. I changed about 35 years ago because, you see, I grew up in Detroit, a bastion of liberalism. They call it progressivism now. They keep changing the name. But anyway, then from there to Boston, a bastion of liberalism. Back to Detroit, and then to New Haven, Connecticut, a bastion of liberalism, and then to Ann Arbor, Michigan, a bastion of liberalism, and then to Baltimore, Maryland, a bastion of liberalism. So I had no chance. I was a liberal. I was way out there. And then I did something that liberals are never supposed to do. I listened to a conservative. I listened to Ronald Reagan. And I said, you know, he doesn't sound like a horrible racist person. He sounds just like my mother. And at that point, I started thinking for myself. And that made a big difference. It made a big difference in my medical career, too. I didn't do what everybody else did. I always started thinking out of the box. How do you solve this problem? And that's the reason that God gave us these complex brains. Your brain has billions and billions of neurons, hundreds of billions of interconnections. It remembers everything you've ever seen, everything you've ever heard. It can process more than 2 million bits of information in 1 second. Would God give you something like that just so that you can be a sheep and follow what somebody else tells you to do? Or to think for yourself? And you know, don't you find it fascinating that so many people say the president's a racist? He's a horrible racist and everything he does. Well, you know, it seems to me like some years ago, Jesse Jackson actually gave the president an award in New York City because he opened so many opportunities for black people. Is that what a racist does? And then when he moved to Palm Beach, he was right on the forefront to fighting the clubs who were not admitting Jews and blacks. Does that sound like what a racist would do? He is the one who finally got the Second Chance Act done. Does that sound like what a racist would do? When he took office, he brought the office of HBCUs to the White House so it could get appropriate attention, more money than ever. Opportunity zones so that people could take this money and direct it to the places where people did not have opportunities before. an economy where you have the lowest unemployment rates for black people in history, and it goes on and on and on. Let me tell you something. If he's a racist, he's an awfully bad one. He needs to go get a lesson from the real racists. The people who look at somebody like you and me and they say, because your skin is a certain color, you have to think a certain way. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you. And they start calling you names. Those are the real racists. But you know, the president believes that a rising tide lifts all boats. He doesn't believe in identity politics, and that's why he's doing things that work for everybody. And we should be happy about that. And the media, they like to pick on him, any little thing. You know, he's not perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. The only one who ever was perfect was Jesus, and they crucified him. So, you know, think about this. And we need to just look at the big picture. Think about all the incredible things that are happening. Think for ourselves and be missionaries. Go out and talk to your family, talk to your friends, help them to realize, because see, if all they're doing is looking at certain media, they don't even know about these things that we just talked about that he has done. And so they can perpetrate this horrible image of him being a bad person. It is absolutely not true. I work with him all the time. He's a wonderful person. He's become a good friend. You remember during the campaign when we were having a debate and I couldn't hear my name. I came out, I stood there, I was waiting to hear everybody else gleefully walk past. He was the only one who stood with me until they straightened it out. That's the kind of person that our president is. He is my
Dr.
friend.
Ben Carson has spent his life doing something that makes political stereotypes extremely uncomfortable, thinking for himself. In this Liberty Voice video, Carson delivers a powerful argument about political division, racial identity, and the pressure placed on people to conform to a particular political worldview. And as a conservative commentator, I think one of the most important parts of the speech is that Carson isn't speaking from theory. He's speaking from personal experience. Carson explained that he grew up in Detroit and spent much of his life surrounded by liberal political environments. He said he once considered himself a liberal until he eventually decided to listen to conservative ideas for himself. That is an important point. You don't have to agree with every conservative politician or every conservative policy. But you should be allowed to examine different ideas without being told that your race, background, or identity determines what you're supposed to believe. Carson specifically challenged the idea that black Americans who support conservative candidates should be insulted or accused of betraying their community. And frankly, this is where the conversation about identity politics becomes complicated. Political disagreement should not automatically become a judgment about someone's character. If a black American supports Republicans, Democrats, independents, or any other political movement, that person should be free to explain why without being reduced to a racial label. Carson also used historical examples to make his broader point about division. He argued that throughout American history, people have sometimes been divided into groups and encouraged to view themselves as superior or inferior to others. His larger message was simple: division makes people easier to control. Now, whether you agree with every comparison Carson made or not, there is a legitimate question here. Should Americans be encouraged to think independently, or should political parties get to decide what people are supposed to believe based on their race, religion, gender, or background? I believe the answer is obvious. Your identity should never be a political prison. Carson then turned his attention toward accusations that Donald Trump is racist. He pointed to several examples that he believes contradict that characterization, including Trump's support for historically black colleges and universities, opportunity zones, criminal justice reforms, and economic policies that Carson says benefited black Americans. Now, reasonable people can debate Trump's record and disagree over how much credit any president deserves for economic or social outcomes. But Carson's broader argument deserves to be heard. If someone claims a politician is fundamentally racist, shouldn't we examine the politician's actual record rather than simply repeating a political label? That's what Carson was asking people to do. Look at the evidence, think for yourself, and then make up your own mind. Another powerful part of the speech was Carson's discussion of his own career. He came from a difficult childhood and eventually became a world-renowned neurosurgeon. His story doesn't prove that every American faces the same circumstances or that government has never played a positive role in anyone's life. But it does demonstrate something important. Circumstances do not have to determine your entire future. And that's one reason Carson's message resonates with many conservatives. The conservative argument is not that every person starts from the same place. They clearly don't. The argument is that Americans should have the opportunity to rise regardless of where they begin. And instead of constantly telling people that they are powerless victims of a broken